listening to the Celtic Coach radio show, an Irish talk show for men and all things manly on KOWS.FM. F for Frank and M for Matilda. And that's the only special effects that I will ever come up with on the show, unless my technician gets his act together. Now, if you're riding around in your car or flying about the universe in your spaceship, you're sitting at home on the lazy chair, you're listening in on 92.5 FM or on the dial at on the wonderful and wacky World Wide Web at KOWS.m. Here every Friday from 1 to 3. Our interviews are from 1:30 to 2:30 with the best in Irish music and, of course, the best in authors, speakers, sex educators, which we have Canada's leading sexpert on the show today, and some of the best life coaches and spiritual teachers on the planet. We have them on the show every week. So let me do a little introduction to this lady. She is, her name, Maureen McGrath. Now, they say McGrath in Canada and America, but in Ireland it'd be McGrath. Hosts the Sunday night sex show on News Talk 980-98 CKNW and is an RN in clinical practice in the field of sexual health, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. Her TED Talk, which I highly encourage everyone to do, is No Sex Marriage, has received over 6.3 million views. As sought-after speaker, she's the executive director of the Women's Health Initiative Network, a not-for-profit organization to raise awareness about below the belt, I like the way that's said, issues for women such as uterine fibroids, sexual bladder and vaginal health. She is the author of the book Sex and Health, Why One Can't Come Without the Other. Presently, Maureen is working with the British Columbia Innovation Council, Innovations in Health. She's also the recipient of the 2009 VCH Nursing Excellent Award. This lady is just a powerhouse of information. I have on her bio here, she's passionate about workplace bullying and raising awareness about male violence against women. Her website is backtothebedroom.ca, where you can find her blog, 50shadesofpink.ca. Without any more further ado, please put your virtual hands together. I know there's a lot of men and women out there, even though it's a men's show, listening in today. So please put your hands together for the lovely Mrs. Is it Miss or Mrs. Maureen?
Ms. Maureen McGrath.
Miss Maureen McGrath. All right. Maureen, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, Dermot. How are you? And thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
You're very welcome indeed, and it's great to have you on the show. And I really appreciate. Now you're a busy lady, Maureen. There's no doubt about it. Just from between your Sunday night sex show, radio sex show that you do, and that's an education. So you talk a lot about sex on the show, I take it.
Yes, I do. It's really a sex and health show, and we discuss a multitude of subjects, everything from body image to addiction to relationships, infidelity, erection function issues, sexual dysfunction, and so no subject. The show is not immune to any subjects.
Yes, a lot of things uncovered on the show, I'm sure.
Everything is underneath the sheets, and really everything is related to sex when you think about it. So it's a very important subject. It's still quite taboo, especially in North America, and I'm working to change that one pillow at a time.
I like it. Changing it one. Now, tell me, you're Canada. Now, you're calling all the way from Canada, just so the listeners know in there that we hold no bars when we have to get the best speakers on the planet, and you're known as Canada's leading sexpert.
Am I now? Yes. That's wonderful.
That's what they're saying about you in America. I mean, I don't know what they're saying about you in Canada.
Don't say that. They're all going to be calling me.
What? Well, it must be interesting in your field of work, Maureen, because you're never going to run out of things to say. I mean, sex is just something that we never seem to bore with.
Well, we do and we don't, quite frankly. And in fact, one thing that might surprise you is that in long-term relationships, women actually report more boredom in the bedroom than men do. But we never bore about talking about the subject of sex. Everybody is keenly interested, whether it be for their own personal or private information, whether they're asking for a friend, whether they want to hear about other people's escapades or other options that people may bring into their bedrooms that will improve their sex life, or ways to increase intimacy, or if they should speak to their doctor about an issue they're having with regard to their sexual function. So it's a vast and wide and broad subject.
Yeah. Well, and for me too, Maureen, it's like, I grew up in a small Irish Catholic. How many was in your family, by the way? Six. Oh, so you had a small Catholic family too.
Small Irish family, yeah.
Yeah.
And yours?
Only 7.
Oh.
2 brothers. And I had an Irish lady on here 2 weeks ago, Catherine Casey, and she came from 10. And she,
oh, yes.
And she reckoned it was pretty small too.
That's right. My neighborhood was 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, the neighborhood that I grew up in, just outside of Boston.
Yeah, well, apparently so. Back in the 50s, they're having more sex than we're having now. Am I totally off on that?
You're not totally off on that. Oh. And it's really the way we live our lives that it has an effect on the intimacy in our relationships, and that can be a problem. Another thing is perfection. A lot of people want to be perfectionists. People marry for reasons other than love, and in fact, probably a whole lot more than they do marry for love. So there are so many things at play, really, when it comes to sexuality in a relationship. And, women today are working inside and outside of the home, unlike they were in the 50s. It has gone up exponentially since that time. And that just means that women are more tired, and that's the number one reason for low sexual desire in women.
Is it now? Wow. Well, look, it's obvious to a blind man that women do the most of the work in terms of the kids, keeping the house together. Maybe they're working. I mean, that there's a lot on women in terms of that, and stress must play into that too.
It certainly does, and it's how people manage stress as well. Right. And it's counterintuitive to think that just because a woman is tired, why wouldn't she want to engage in sex? And if she's in a heterosexual relationship, a guy might think that, because men deal with stress through sex. And also, sex is so good for you, and people may not realize that it can help to keep your immune system humming. It may help with pain. There are so many benefits to sex. Even having sex boosts your libido. So for those longing for a more lively sex life, have sex. It will improve women's bladder control, lower your blood pressure, and that will help with stress management as well, help you to sleep. It counts as a little bit of exercise. It's probably gets a little bit more rating on that. It's not too much, but it depends on your antics in the bedroom, your acrobatics, I suppose. It can lower your heart attack risk, and women, that's the number one killer of women, is heart disease. We associate heart disease with men, but it's actually the number one killer of men and women. Yeah. It lessens pain. It may make prostate cancer less likely for men. That's another benefit. But there are benefits for women to engage in sex, but that fatigue seems to trump the desire to have sex. And that's if we look at desire as the first aspect of the female sexual response cycle. So the other way to look at it is, a lot of women who have low sexual desire, they might think, their husband makes an advance or the partner makes an advance. They think, I'm too tired. I don't want to. I've had kids hanging on me all day long. I don't really want to have sex. Well, if women took just a page out of Nike's book and just decided to just do it, and they did, and they enjoyed it, we call that responsive desire. So it's really around educating women about sexual desire that can help, that's one aspect of it, that may help improve intimacy in a relationship.
Wow. And I mean, not only, you're talking about benefits of sex there, but it also just puts a really nice smile on your face at the end of a long day.
It sure does. And being close to your partner can soothe stress and anxiety, and touching and hugging can release the body's natural feel-good hormone. And sexual arousal releases a brain chemical that revs up your brain's pleasure and reward system. So that sex and that intimacy, that closeness to your partner can boost not only your self-esteem, but your sexual self-esteem and ultimately your happiness as well. So it's really a prescription for a healthy and happy life.
Yeah, I'm with you on the touching and kind of a little bit of flirting throughout the day. That kind of seems to, it's, I remember reading this article where it was when the little lady comes home from work, you know, she really does want to talk about her day because that's her way of her brain's way of creating that oxytocin, that chemical that makes her feel loved, wanted, comforted. And so I think, guys, we kind of make jokes at this, you know, in terms of, oh, she comes home and all she wants to do is talk. And I'm too busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And really, we're doing our little ladies a huge, not only service, I don't want to say it's like a job, I might get in trouble here, but I have to watch me language today too, Maureen.
You certainly do, because I'm on it, and little lady doesn't pass.
Yeah. It's a men's show, but, you know, we have a lot of women that listen in because they want to understand us, or they think we have some secret. I think we're quite simple. But
I think so.
But yeah, in many ways. But in giving the little lady that time when she comes home, What are we doing for her in terms of our relationship, and in terms of oxytocin, and in terms of, you know, creating that connection, that intimacy?
You know, that bonding, right? That bonding hormone, that feeling loved and wanted and respected, and just to listen. And, you know, I think those are dreaded words to a man's ears. Or can we talk? You think, how long is this going to go on? I want to have sex, thinks the guy. And so you're thinking, sure, we can talk, but how long will that be? Are we going to have sex afterward?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to touch. Women don't want men to touch. I hear this in my clinical practice all the time. And I've seen thousands of women, they'll say, I don't want him to hug me or to kiss me because it will lead to sex. I'm afraid it will lead to that I'm going to have sex with him. And so it's a really unhealthy way to approach intimacy in your relationship. But then you have to step it back a little bit and say, you know, am I with the right person? Did I settle? Did I marry the right person? Did I get married because my biological clock was ticking? And so some of those relationships are going to be a whole lot harder to manage and to deal with. But I do think conversation, communication, dialogue, being able to just get something off your chest as a woman to your trusted partner, your confidant, without the male partner. And you know, we some of these things happen in same-sex relationships as well. But a male partner will want to problem solve immediately.
Yes,
and so women will, so there's a discrepancy in communication there. Women will just want to say, this is what happened, the high chair broke, and, you know, and so it's like, well, why didn't you do this, or why didn't you do that, or let me fix it, you know, and that's not it. It's already been fixed. She went out and she bought a new one. So there's kind of a bit of a discrepancy in that communication, but it's important to listen. That's why we have two ears and one mouth. So listen during that time. You know, sit down, take the time, maybe have conversations outside of the bedroom versus the conversations inside of the bedroom. That's what I hear from a lot of men. The second we get into bed, I make a sexual advance. They complain that women never initiate, and she wants to talk, and I just want to have sex and go to sleep. So it's really, we're on different playing fields at many times. Many couples are. A lot of them get it right.
Yeah. Well, now, when you talk about fixing, I don't see. I as a man, I go for because I feel I have more of a logical brain. You know, we're kind of geared. I think men are geared to just figure stuff out. That's why we go out with the clubs and we club the Brontosaurus and we bring home the food. We're just, I think we're hardwired for that. So, you know, when my little lady tells me something, I have to hold myself back not to come up with a solution or to say, look, why don't you just do this? Because what you're saying is, and men, put your big listening ears on for a moment. What you're saying, Maureen, is that they're not looking for us to give them an answer. They're just looking for us to listen. Do I have that right?
You have that absolutely correct. Just try it. And not even 100% of the time during the conversation. Maybe if you give 80% of listening and 20% of talking, because that's another complaint of women. We're far more complex, but it's like I was telling you, I was talking to you, it was like you weren't even listening to me. So you got to check in every now and again, too. Don't just check out completely for the entire conversation. Listen, but in an engaged way.
Now Maureen, to help us out here, because at times, you know, our brain is heading south. How do we know?
Wait a minute. Did it ever go north? No.
It lives north, but it works south. We could get into that. We could go really south on that one. But when do I know when she wants to just for me to listen, and when do I know when she wants me to figure it out for her?
That's every couple's objective, really. And it's really about negotiating your agreement. It sounds a little bit cold, but it's also knowing your partner, understanding your partner, and you gain that through effective communication and listening. And so that's something that is built up over time. You hear people after 10, 20 years of marriage, I know them so well, this is how they would respond, and they can predict exactly how somebody would respond. And there are certain things you cannot change about somebody else, so there are things to work on. Feedback is a gift, but we're also afraid that we're going to be imperfect, especially in today's world. Everybody has to have the white house and the white picket fence and the 2 cars in the driveway, 2.5 children, and their marriage has to be perfect. The entire cul-de-sac thinks everybody else's marriage is perfect until a dresser drawer gets thrown out the second floor window, and then, there's trouble down the street. And then people start to talk amongst each other. But we're so fearful that our relationship is going to look less than perfect that we're almost afraid to talk to our spouses about it. So you might set some rules around the conversation. We're going to talk for 15 or 20 minutes before dinner, or we're going to go into the living room and have this discussion. And it really takes practice. That communication takes practice, and you have to be respectful of the conversation you're having with your partner. So you never want to do name calling, use profanity, any physical or verbal abuse, or any emotional abuse, or any sort of, we are products of the families in which we were raised. And so, oftentimes people will say they were raised in a particular type of family, and everybody was screaming and yelling at each other the night before, and the next morning they all got up and said hi. Well, that might not work for your wife, right? So you have to really understand who the person is, and it's observing them, and it's listening and learning and trying things out, much like in the bedroom. It's about exploration, and it's about understanding, communicating what feels good. And so really the two relationships can parallel very nicely.
Yeah, I like those words now, communication and exploration, because I totally agree with you. There's no perfect relationship out there. I think God bless Hollywood, but they've done us a disservice in terms of all the movies that they're just so perfect, and I think in a way we take that on. Would that be fair to say?
We certainly do take that on, and that's the ideal. And also, porn has taken it to another level. So there's also pornography online, and we think, a lot of guys have trouble sexually because they have viewed so much porn online and very extravagant porn as well. And so then they have difficulty performing with their partner. So, and also men, and particularly younger men, might think this is how sex is supposed to be. Because sex is such a taboo subject, so few people are talking about it. We have very, very rigid curriculum about sex education. And so we're really teaching about sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy, or how not to get pregnant. And those are really the 2 top subjects. We're not teaching about desire and pleasure and intimacy and satisfaction, sexual self-esteem, body image, mental health, addiction. All of those are related to sexuality and sensuality, sexual identity, genderism, transgenderism, the binary flow of sexuality. So, and also accepting everybody for who they are. And, people think if they have particular desires or needs that they're going to be perceived as weird or bizarre. I get a lot of emails about fetishes. Yeah. And, fetishes are fine. It's the rule generally is in a relationship, if it's mutual and consenting and safe and there's nothing that says you shouldn't be doing that. You're going to be considered strange if you like to engage in a particular type of behavior. If it crosses over into the criminal line, that you're stalking somebody because of, their pink toenail polish, then that's another issue. But a lot of people have fetishes. A lot of people like to put on women's underwear. They like to put on nylons. They like to have sex in a certain way. They can only have sex toys in the bedroom with them. So there's certain things that people like to utilize, and but the relationship is private, and as long as it is safe and two-way and sometimes three-way. There's a lot of threesomes that happen today. A lot of people choose that as a way to increase the excitement in their relationship, and as long as that is mutually agreed upon, that's fine.
Yeah, that's in that. What do you say to men who, because I'd have to say, even for myself now, coming up with fetishes or talking to my girlfriend, there's definitely some nervousness around doing that, because am I freaky? Am I weird? I mean, what do you say to men that come in and would have a hard time bringing something like that up to their spouse or their girlfriend? I mean, how would you coach them or help them there?
Well, it's definitely not first date conversation. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're a second date. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe the third. No. It's funny because this always surprises me, couples who've been together for like 20, 30 years, they don't even talk about, if they're in a sexless marriage, they won't even talk about the whys. So I actually have to counsel or advise or educate men and women how to bring up the subject of sex with a person that they have been living with and maybe sleeping with for 25 years, and then it just stopped the last 5 years. Yeah. So there's, I can provide people, I often have to provide them with mantras or statements or a script, basically, that they're comfortable with. Like, what would you like to say to your wife or to your husband? In the case where the man has low sexual desire, and that occurs as well. And so you want it in their words and their sentiment, but it's a slow conversation. So that can be very challenging. Never mind bringing up fetishes to the woman that you've been with for 25 years. And a lot of guys actually live secretly with their fetishes because they are so ashamed about it. And some have actually tried to bring out their fetishes with their wives, and they have been shunned or thought, called weird, or, the woman didn't want to engage in that at all. And it's just an arousing behavior, basically. A fetish, but it's really having that conversation in a, say what you mean what you say, don't say it mean. So you want to just start slow and just, I'm curious is always a great word to use. Oh, so often. I love the word curious, and I'm curious how you would feel about such and such. Maybe something comes on television, and you think, well, I'm curious, how would you feel about that if it's related to fetishes? So that's a way that people won't get defensive, they won't get their hackles up, and it's a soft way to have that conversation. So, there's many different techniques, but certainly people need guidance and confidence around that.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier, and then I want to talk a little bit about your TEDx talk, which I thought was wonderful, the sexless marriage. But you kind of talked a little bit about, erectile dysfunction for men, premature ejaculation or early ejaculation. 40% of men over 40 experience some type of erectile dysfunction, which that blows me away. 40% is a huge number. For
age 40, it certainly is. And it's 40, even... Yeah. Yeah, and at age 60% will have some degree of erectile dysfunction. So those are two different disorders, which I'm sure you realize, premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. Did you?
I just put them together. Hey, I'm a guy. It just all goes into one block.
It's very quick. The whole thing is fast. You didn't even know it happened.
Well, talk to me about premature ejaculation. Now, how does that happen, and what can men do about it?
Very, very common. And premature ejaculation is uncontrolled ejaculation, either before or shortly after sexual penetration. It happens typically with very minimal sexual stimulation and before the person wishes, of course. It's over before they even know it. And it may result in unsatisfactory sex for both partners. And this may increase anxiety that actually may contribute to the problem, because anxiety may underlie the problem of premature ejaculation. And it's one of the most common forms of male sexual dysfunction, and probably every man has been touched by premature ejaculation at some point. But often the mother is blamed for this.
The mother is blamed?
The mother is blamed,
well,
yes, of course.
I'm all ears now, Maureen.
Well, here's the deal. Because sex is so secretive and so private and so taboo, kids are exploring just if they're developing naturally, and there are certain stages, and there are certain periods of time where children will start to self-explore. It usually begins in the womb, but if boys at their in their pre-adolescent years are exploring, self-stimulating, masturbating, and they hear their mother coming down the hallway, they want to quickly get it over with, so the mother doesn't see them because there's shame.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so that causes shame around it. And so the mother might say, what are you doing? Putting further shame on the person, when it's actually very healthy and very normal for men to masturbate. That's the most common question that I get, which I think you heard in my TEDx talk, was how much masturbation is too much masturbation? Really, unless it's impacting your quality of life, or it crosses over into the criminal zone, like you are exposing yourself to somebody and masturbating in front of somebody.
That's not your wife.
True enough. Exactly.
Just want to get specific. We need clear instructions here, Maureen.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you for the clarification. Even your wife might not want it either. She might way prefer that you clean the toilets or vacuum to masturbating in front of her. But
I'm not sure that's a huge turn on. Yeah, but go on, Louis.
But it can be in a mutual relationship. That certainly can be. Self-stimulation can be a turn-on for partners as well. But it's like the right time, There's a time and a place for everything.
So it's a conditioning, you're saying. Like as a young boy, I mean, sure, I masturbated as much as I possibly could. When I found out, like around 14 or 15, I was like, holy moly, this is on the table. Wow, and it's free. I was like, hell, I'm going to do that all the time. But I absolutely agree with you. Not only the mother, the father, the brother, whoever it might be, it's like, I don't want to get caught, so I get it over as quickly as possible. And so that creates a conditioning in the body that as soon as penetration or any idea of penetration, you're going to ejaculate.
It can. In most cases of premature ejaculation do not have a clear cause.
Right.
So with sexual experience and age, men often learn to delay orgasm. But premature ejaculation may occur right alongside of a new partner, the excitement of a new partner. Or it may only happen in certain sexual situations, or if it's been a long time since the last ejaculation, just get a little too excited there.
Yeah.
But there's also a psychological component like anxiety, guilt, depression. They can also cause it. And in some cases, it may be related to a medical problem, such as hormonal problems, thyroid disease, injury, or a side effect of certain medications.
Yeah. What now? Are you do you go for Viagra? Do you tell people to get Viagra if they're having some type of an erectile dysfunction?
Not necessarily. And erectile dysfunction is another. Maybe we should just say with premature ejaculation, how to repair that.
Oh yeah, sorry. Gosh, yes.
That's okay. Just so we stay on track there.
Yes, let's get pointed. Let's get pointed in one direction here. Oftentimes it's mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's addressing the anxiety. It's thinking of your mother-in-law. That ought to slow things down. Also, some of the antidepressants, but this is kind of down the road. We're always better to do things if we can from a conservative management strategy as opposed to taking medications. But if it's a really serious, severe problem, there might be an anxiety there, but antidepressants will slow things down for sure. But in fact, there are some sexual side effects that you can get from antidepressants. So, you want to tread very carefully with that. Also talking to your partner about it. There's the stop-start method. So there's a lot of different methods. So the stop-start method is, you get to the point of get aroused and have sexual stimulation to the point of almost there, and then you stop that stimulation. And sometimes men will, or their partner can hold their glands ahead of the penis and stop sexual stimulation. And so then it teaches you to actually delay ejaculation. It's kind of a bit of penis training, shall we say. Yes, yeah.
Penis, which you may never have gotten as a kid.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
It's on-the-job training, which is kind of nice.
It is. It's free.
Maureen,
No
we're
charge.
going to take a station ID break. I'll be right back in about 20 seconds. Just stay on the phone there. We'll do a little station ID. All right, welcome everyone. You're listening to the Celtic Coach radio show, an Irish talk show just for men and all things manly. You're listening on KOWS.FM. If you're in your car driving around Sonoma County today, you're listening at 92.5 FM. We are talking to just a wonderful, wonderful lady today. We're talking about sex. I know it's a great subject to talk about and something we never, ever, 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 ever get bored of or bored. Well, some of us do get bored with it, and that's why we're having this conversation today. Maureen, hello to you.
Hello again.
Maureen,
My pleasure to be here.
A pleasure to have you. I mean, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Maureen, is what I meant.
Be careful.
You have to be so clear on community radio. Maureen, talk to us a little bit. I want to talk about your TEDx talk, but before we jump into that, what are some thoughts on erectile dysfunction? So we I think we've covered premature ejaculation. But,
I think we have.
What about erectile dysfunction? Like men have a problem with Harry standing up, with Harry, jumping to attention, with Johnny on the job. What do we? I could go on with that all day. But what do we? What are some of the things that you see in your practice, men coming?
Yes, and trouble visiting the bishop. Anyway.
Yeah.
Erectile dysfunction is also referred to as impotence for a lot of people. That's a bit more of a lay term, but it is the inability for a man to attain and maintain an erection adequate for penetrative sex. And so I had a patient in my clinical practice this week, and he said it was a couple that had not had sex. They were having sex maybe 4 times a year, and the last time was in June of this year. And he said, but at that time he's had some erectile dysfunction. So that was an issue for his wife. And I said, oh, so, you have, and he said he'd had it before. But then he said, but I don't have erectile dysfunction. But, to clarify, he does actually. He was about 62 years old, and, with a few times where you're unable to attain and or maintain that erection. So the erectile dysfunction is a canary in the coal mine for many men, especially older men, but it certainly does occur to younger men as well, can experience erectile dysfunction. But it's the canary in the coal mine because it can actually be an indicator of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension. So it can mean that something else is going on. In addition to, it can be troubling for both the affected man and his partner. I also get a lot of men who come into my clinical practice and they're complaining that they're in sexless marriages. And then I find out that they have a flaccid penis or they have severe erectile dysfunction. So that's not a turn on for women. And they don't realize the importance of having it treated because erectile dysfunction can cause relationship stress, anxiety, depression, psychological pain, and self-esteem issues, and of course, immense sexual frustration. And so, but expecting a woman to be wanting to be desirous of you when you have erectile dysfunction is an issue.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and I know for men, like part of being a man, at least in my world or in my head, is we want to do a good job in the bedroom. We want to satisfy our ladies. We want to look like we want to be King Kong. We want to be the guy with the sword who slays the dragon and gets the girl and gives her an orgasm. And I think with erectile dysfunction, that must play a big part into confidence too for men because we like to get things done.
You want to be the leprechaun of love. Absolutely.
Right. I like that.
It is a big problem for men, and it does hit at their manhood.
Yes.
And, but men need to understand, and this, again, is not their fault. It goes back to the poor sexual education that we do, at least in North America, but educating men that it's a blood flow issue. And so that's basically what it's about. It has nothing to do with the kind of man that you are. Your desires to pleasure a woman, to perform well in the bedroom, to be that loving, intimate, amazing partner, can all get it can get all mixed up when erectile dysfunction presents itself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now this leads very nicely into your TEDx talk, where you talked about sexless marriage, and you talked about masturbation, cheating, and loneliness, and certain subjects. Beautiful. By the way, listeners, definitely listen to that. It's really wonderful, wonderful talk.
Thank you.
And you're very funny in it too. I like that about you, that we can have a conversation about sex in a respectful way, Maureen, but also, be playful about it. I think both parts are necessary.
Yes, respect and playfulness, I think, are two key ingredients to a great love life.
One of the things that jumped out at me like a bad check was men in sexless marriages, they cheat so that they can remain in the marriage.
Yes.
Talk about that, because that to me now sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you're the expert here, so I'm going to be quiet.
Well, it's a general statement, basically, but that's sort of the trend that I've seen in my clinical practice. And even a patient that I had in my clinical practice this week, or a couple, it was their second marriage, and they were in a sexless marriage. Become a bit of an expert on that. And so I said the risks of... Now, the woman had a number of medical issues and body image issues and some anxiety and some isms. So she had some workaholism, and she also had never experienced an orgasm. But this was their second marriage, and so they hadn't had sex for probably 6 or 8 months. But they presented to my clinical practice, which was good, so they're starting to get help. They loved each other. They cared about one another. She was physically attracted to him, he to her. She had actually contracted a sexually transmitted infection from him. She had a herpes outbreak, but he had only cold sores. He had never had genital herpes, but we're finding HSV1, which is the cold sores, in the genitalia these days. So practicing safe sex is always important. So that freaked her out, and that had an impact on her sexual desire. I said, well, the risk of, all of these things that you're telling me about, we can deal with. We can resolve these. We can work together and get to a better place for you, because, and if that's important to you. And one reason that you might not think of that it's important to you is because the risk of a sexless marriage is infidelity, the ultimate betrayal. And so he said, well, I would never do that. And she happened to know about a time when he had cheated on his first wife. And so he was like, oh, yeah, I actually would do that. And I'm like, if you're going to say it any place, you can say it in my office. And he's like, oh, yeah, I had forgotten about that. And that just shows you how much it's about the sex when they are in a marriage and they're happy in the marriage, but they're not happy with the sex. And they're going to find the sex elsewhere. Studies show that the woman that they seek is not as attractive as their own partner or wife. And it's also about the sex. They don't want to leave the marriage. And because the marriage is not just about the sex, the marriage is about the house. And the houses are very expensive here in Vancouver. I'm sure they are in California as well. So it's about the in-laws and the country club and the children and the neighbors and, the bother and divorce and the legal fees.
Yeah.
So it's about a whole lot more. So, yes, men remain in sexless marriages. They cheat to remain in the sexless marriage. That allows them to tolerate it. I know many men who have had sex partners while they've been married that their wives allegedly never knew about. By the same token, some women have so shut the door on sex that they've said, I don't really care if he seeks it elsewhere as long as he doesn't tell me about it.
Do you find now, I may get in trouble for asking this, but would it be in there at all that the man going out looking, he's not getting sex from his wife, so he goes out and has sex with the secretary or whatever, and then the wife finds out. Would that be a cry for help? Like, hey, I want to stay in the relationship, but I don't know how to bring it up to you, that, hey, I want sex, and we're not having sex.
This is a conversation that a lot of men don't even bring up with their wives. This is locker room. This is locker room talk, okay? Yeah. This is not what your fine president down there said locker room talk was. That's not locker room talk. This is that the men sit around and they all lament about their sexless marriages or how they're not getting enough. There might be one guy in the crowd that actually gets enough, but something changes after marriage. A lot more responsibilities. You get to know them better, number one. The mortgage, financial problems, job stressors, how to raise children, religion, a lot of things come into play. And so sex falls out the window rather quickly. And so it's not a cry for help. It's a really more of an, oh, darn. Because had the man had the conversation with the woman, or had in a same-sex relationship, had that person had the conversation, these are things that need to be discussed early on before the wedding. How would you deal with if we had a time, where I was sick and we couldn't have sex for 6 months? How would you deal with that? Some people, they just have cheating in their blood. They just cannot remain monogamous as well. Their first marriage ended as a result of an affair, and their second marriage ends as a result of an affair. Or the second wife is shocked that her husband is seeking sex outside of the marriage. Even if, they are having sex in the marriage, but sometimes it can be very dissatisfying sex, or they might be unhappy at home, and men are not taught to verbalize and talk about their emotions and talk about what's bothering them.
Yeah. Well, you referred there earlier now that some people come to your practice, Maureen, and they're having trouble, and they say, "Hey, why don't we bring?" And I'm sure it's probably the guy. Why don't we bring a second woman, into the bedroom and see if that helps things? You were saying that sometimes a twosome becomes the threesome as a way to rev up the marriage or rev up the bedroom, as you call it. Does that always work out?
It's a challenge, but a lot of people engage in it. And yes, you're absolutely correct. It is typically the guy that dreams of the MFF.
Yeah, that's a fantasy for most men.
It is. Yeah. It is probably the number one fantasy for men, is two women and one man.
Yes.
And for women who engage in it, women prefer, many women prefer two men and herself. So, but that can bring other issues in. So it really depends on the arrangement there. But it can cause problems because there's only one holy grail, for example. So who is that going to be? Is it the wife, or is it the third party that you've brought in? Again, it's a conversation. It's talking about it. Is what's off limits? What isn't off limits? What can you engage in? So it can often lead to acrimony in a relationship. Where I do a little work with healthcare problems and solutions and innovative solutions, basically, in technology. And so, sex robots are coming. They're getting more.
I can't believe that. I mean, I can't believe. Like I said,
they've been around for a while.
Now, tell us about sex robots, Maureen, because as men, all the men are like, "What? Sex robots?" So you've got our attention.
Where do I get one?
Are you selling these? Are you selling these in your practice, or what's going on?
I'm going to after this show. Robots are replacing everything. They're building cars. They're cleaning they're vacuuming our floors. They can even make our food. We can turn our cars. But now, their sex dolls have been around for a while, the blow-up doll, for example. But sex robots are essentially realistic dolls that have become very sophisticated. They have movements that closely mimic humans, so they can actually, have a romp in the hay. And these sex robots are kind of a safe way to have a threesome. So, from a sexually transmitted infection perspective, from a jealousy perspective, I mean, really, people aren't going to get jealous of a doll, although they might be, because people are falling in love with their sex robots as well.
Yeah. If he's having more sex with the doll than he is with me, I think you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, but you can murder a doll. It's okay. It's not a crime anywhere yet.
Yeah. I can see it now. The man comes home and the doll is nailed to a tree outside the front door.
Bloodied.
Oh, my God.
But they're actually mimicking, they're doing work on robots that so they're allowing robots to have a moral code, to be seductive. So they're going to be coming with sensors in their faces and hands and breasts. And so there's a really, these are going to gain wide acceptance very rapidly. There is, in fact, there's a sex doll brothel in Barcelona. And so it's Europe's first ever sex doll brothel. It was open this year. And some entrepreneurs, they saw a gap in the market, and they decided to start, a new idea for a startup.
And it's doing well. I mean, is it people going there and all that?
It costs between $75 and $150 an hour.
Yeah.
There's no risk of, what is your wife going to say when she might admit you to the psych ward, but what's she going to say if you've cheated on her with a doll? Really?
I don't. Yeah, I can hear my little lady saying, "What?"
Well, yeah. As I said,
you'd rather do it with a doll than me.
It sounds crazy right now, but whoever thought that we were going to hold a computer in our hand?
Oh, for God's sake! Yeah.
Always, and have it attached with us always. So, where people are going to be marrying them, there may be some other issues that people have to deal with, or they may be a way for people to have an outlet for sexual expression. But there are many applications, and they're going to astound us.
Yeah. Maureen, let's talk about the little ladies here for a moment, because I think we've given the men enough attention between, erectile this and dysfunction that, and then we end it beautifully with sex robots. Are there sex robots for women?
Or is
that not a market?
I don't think the market is quite as big.
Yeah.
But, that has to do with how women are socialized around sex. And, men are socialized to, the notch in, the more notches in your belt, the better. They're taught to be bravado around sex. They're taught to brag about how many sexual experiences they have. And that's macho and that's masculine. And for those guys that don't have those same experiences, they might feel less than. But women are slut-shamed from an early age. Women are not taught about pleasure. Women are not taught about enjoying their own bodies, sexual self-exploration. There are so many women I've had in my clinical practice, or I've seen in my clinical practice, that do not self-stimulate, do not masturbate, although women are increasingly masturbating, but these women never did because a religion came into play, or they had a very strict parenting regime growing up. And society says if women enjoy sex, they are sluts. Now, there's predatory behavior going on all around now. It's coming out, especially in Hollywood and down there in America. And this predation that occurs to women, women are actually blamed for it because of what we might wear or how many drinks we might have, and they've got it wrong. So women are, I would love for women to know that they can enjoy sex. I mean, to be taught that, to be taught about pleasure. But you had some other questions about the ladies?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I heard you talk about was, and I found this amazing, 33% of women have never experienced an orgasm. Is that true?
Actually, only 1/3 of women have ever experienced an orgasm. Many women don't even know if they've ever experienced an orgasm. 70% of women require clitoral stimulation to experience an orgasm. Many women are wildly disappointed with penetrative sex, especially initially, because it can be painful. They may have been told it was going to be painful, so then, that was it. It was painful. The power of persuasion. Many women think, well, what was that about? That wasn't anything. In fact, I didn't enjoy it at all. And so we don't talk about orgasm. We don't talk about pleasure for women. And many women have gone decades with never having experienced an orgasm. And also for some women, it might take upwards of 20 minutes to experience an orgasm, 20 minutes of stimulation to experience an orgasm. Women are multi-orgasmic, so the lucky ones, and there can be different types, but it's really, they need education, and sometimes they get to a certain age and they're like, what have I been missing out on? I may need some help in this area. And there is help in that area. Vaginal health is important, and perhaps self-exploration, what feels good for you. Take some time in the afternoon by yourself, or utilize a sex toy. My favorite sex toy, which is therapeutic for my patients, is called the Womanizer, and it's a clitoral suckling device, and it works 100% of the time for women. I mean, it's a money-back guarantee for women to experience orgasm. And so for women who might take a long time to experience orgasm with their partner, they might bring this sex toy into the bedroom with them, give their partner a little bit of a break. He comes in a minute and a half, and, she in 5 minutes now. And so they can go to sleep and deal with the kids a whole lot easier. This is another sexual health issue, because the release of certain chemicals at orgasm, because it's actually prolactin, is released, and that is responsible for the feelings of relaxation and sleepiness. So you might nod off more quickly after sex for a good chemical reason, and that's very important, and that can help you to deal with stress and deal with the kids and deal with the next day if you've got a good night's sleep under your belt.
Yeah. Do you find that women might be embarrassed or feel awkward about saying to the man, "Hey, would you mind if we bring a the womanizer, if we bring a some type of a vibrator into the bedroom"? Would the woman be instigating that, or would it be more of a man instigating that?
A lot of men feel, it gives them a feeling of that they're not good enough, that they're not adequate enough, they're not performing well enough, and they might not be.
It depends on the size of the vibrator, Maureen. Like if you come in with something that looks like a baseball bat, I think I would get intimidated.
This is true, but it's not a big device. It's probably more of a conversation that the woman will have.
Yeah.
And you do have to have that conversation with your partner and assure your partner that this is not a replacement for them, that this is just adjunctive therapy for your sex life. And men love that their woman is being pleasured, and it doesn't mean that you can't still hug and caress and touch your woman while she's using her womanizer. And in fact, you might buy a womanizer for your little lady for Christmas. That's a great gift because, many women, of course, with the explosion of 50 Shades of Grey, many women got a little bit more in touch with their sexuality. And, this particular device works every time. I have 80-year-old women who have never experienced an orgasm or their partner passed away 10 years ago, and they want to regain that in their life. And so the womanizer is a great way. But, of course, you have to have good vaginal health, and so vaginal dryness is I hate to end on this note, so we won't, but vaginal dryness is a big issue, and that can lead to painful sex. And there are treatments for that, personal moisturizers, low-dose localized estrogen therapy. So this is why the conversation with your healthcare practitioner or by emailing me, can be very helpful. I just have a passion for helping people to live their best and sexiest and most intimate life possible for them.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
When they can, because they might not be able to at some point.
Yeah, no, and your passion comes through, Maureen. It's really wonderful. I really appreciate how you speak of this. It's very clear. It's very relatable, and also very respectful. Do you have a manonizer?
Thank you.
You going to create the manonizer or manizer?
There's always the fleshlight. Actually, somebody sat down at my desk. Someone sat down at my desk recently and said, I used her desk, and there was a male vibrating device on it right in front of me. So, I'm sure I can find something.
We don't want the men left out in the cold,
No, we don't. Of course, a guy's always looking for something. We just can't have it, can we? No. But the perks of sex extend well beyond the bedroom and my office.
Now, Maureen, we have three little questions that I want to ask you. But before I do, what and this might be a loaded question, but what advice would you give for men who they want to show up fully for their little ladies? What advice would you give to them?
Okay, it's a great question because a lot of men present to me with erectile dysfunction. They come in and they don't actually tell me they have erectile dysfunction right off the bat. I can probably tell them, but they tell me that their wife doesn't want to have sex with them. And so one of the best things you can bring to your partner is your best self. And so these guys typically are, they have a beer gut, they're overweight, they don't exercise, they're drinking every day, they're, in a low mood, they have short fuses. And so I put them on what I call my all-in program, and it's basically how to eat, and it's low glycemic index because sugar is like cancer for blood flow. So it's low glycemic index. I provide them with recipes, and it's high protein and a little bit of carbs, and at least cutting down on the alcohol, cutting out, exercising every day. It often treats their erectile dysfunction because it's the sexless marriage that they're coming to complain about. But they also, when I do a sexual health history, I find out that they have erectile dysfunction. And of course, they need to understand that that's not a turn on for women. number one, which for some reason guys don't realize that. I'm not sure why that is, but I think partly it's because men desire intimacy as well. It's not just about the sex for you guys.
Yes,
so that you do. And so anyway, getting healthy, being positive, your serotonin levels, exercising, eating properly, managing your emotions, so emotion regulation. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Be your best person you can at any age.
Yeah, and
I said to a patient the other day, she was 89, I said, how's that ex-husband of yours? She just divorced him 6 months ago. She was married for 50 years. She said, he's dead. I said, well, that ought to teach him, huh? Anyway, she said she had 6 months of happiness and 50 years of misery. You know, and she said, and I thought, I said, how old was he? 92. I said, he was still ornery and nasty at 92. She said, yes, he was, right up till his dying day.
Yeah.
So, life's to be enjoyed, not endured.
Yeah. Well, now, you also said in your TED Talk that, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s are having sex.
They are.
So there's no...
They are.
There's no cutoff zone here. Oh, 60,
no.
I'm done.
No, there's no retirement.
Yeah.
For sex.
I like it a lot. Hey, yeah, all right. I had one more question in there. Let me see if I can squeeze this question in before we do the 3 questions, Maureen. Monogamy. Are we cut out for monogamy, Maureen?
Not everybody is. I mean, it's a tough one to answer. It depends on your agreement. We need to start, infidelity has outlasted marriage. Infidelity is tenacious. Yet it's the ultimate betrayal. Another conversation couples need to have prior to. If you went outside of the marriage, what would be the reasons that you went outside? Is that a reason for departure? Or does it mean there are issues in the relationship or issues with the person? Is it really a happy marriage? So what are the problems that we have to deal with? Can you go back after somebody has betrayed you in that way? Can you go back to the second home, the cottage where the affair took place? Can you walk into the office where your husband had an affair with the secretary? So these are tough questions, and not everybody is cut out for monogamy. And we like playfulness, we like variety, we like the spice of life. And the hormone decreases after 18 months. That PEA that's released in the brain when you first meet somebody and you're excited to meet them, and then the old humdrum old you again comes into play for most marriages. Rarely will you find somebody 25, 30 years, I'm still excited to see him or her.
Yeah, well, I resonate with what you said earlier there about, it's not that we're running around looking for sex. For men, we truly are looking for that intimacy through sex.
It's the women that are running around looking for sex. We are. We've been fooling you this whole time.
Damn, I knew I had it wrong. All right, Maureen, just before we go here, before we let you go, and I'd talk to you all day long, 3 little questions that we like to ask our guests to come on the show. First question, Maureen. If you had magical powers, what's one thing you would change in the world?
Ooh, I would actually change sexual abuse. I would put an end to sexual abuse of our children. It contributes to anxiety disorders, lifelong mental health issues, drug addiction, mental illness. So that's the one thing I would love to change.
Yeah. If what advice would you have for young men or women, teenagers? What advice would you give to them?
Be true to yourself. Never worry about what anybody else thinks about you or says about you. Don't let anyone rent space in your head, and just go for it. Live out your dream, live out your passion, carry on as long as you're kind and respectful and consenting and mutual, especially in a sexual relationship. But just go for it. In those young years, people have great ideas and thoughts, and you can do it regardless of the circumstances from whence you came.
Yeah. And third question: if you get up to the pearly gates, if you get up to God, Spirit, Source, whatever you call that big guy in the sky, lady in the sky, what do you want God to say to you when you get up to heaven?
Thanks for trying your best.
Oh, very nice.
You weren't perfect, but you know what? We appreciated your effort. And I learned that in Catholic school, I think grade 2, and they said, you know what, the grades don't matter, but your effort does. And I think that applies in relationships, in life, in professions, in your career, and just in relationships with other people. Just try your best.
Yeah, I love your attitude, Maureen, and the passion that you have, that you bring to what you do. It's very inspiring. So thank you for everything you're putting out in the world. And thanks
thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate our conversation today, and I'm sure that all our listeners will get a lot out of it. Until again, Maureen, we'd love to have you again. Wishing you all the best. Would you share before you go, if people want to hear more about what you're doing, what you're putting out in the world, what website or how would they contact you?
It's backtothebedroom.ca. So that's backtothebedroom.ca. They can always tune in to this Sunday Night Sex Show on CKNW. It's a free download on iTunes. So you just go Maureen McGrath or Sunday Night Sex Show in iTunes, and I ought to pop up. And my book is on Amazon, Sex and Health, Why One Can't Come Without the Other. So that's you can buy that on Amazon. And you can always email me, and that's through my website as well, backtothebedroom.ca. Or call into the show on Sunday nights.
Wonderful. Maureen, wishing you all the best, and I hope in the future we can have you come back on the show and chat with us a little bit more. Until then, take good care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Dermot. A pleasure talking to you today.
And to you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, my dear ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for another week. Yes, indeed. I hope you've enjoyed our show. What a beautiful, beautiful show today with the lovely Maureen McGrath. And if you want to get a copy of today's show, I will be sending it out on Sunday night, but you can pick up a copy by emailing me at thecelticcoach@gmail.com, or you can go on my website, thecelticcoach.com, go to the page there, and you can pick up a copy of it there. Should be on the website next Monday. Also, before I go, the next Coach's Corner is on December 6th. That's a free call where I share the latest coaching science around how to get the most out of your life. I'll also be coaching people live on the call around problems that they might be having in their life. Think of it as a life support call every month. For more information on that, you can email me at thecelticcoach@gmail.com and just ask me to put you on the Zoom invite for next month's call, or you can go to the website and look into the Coach's Corner. There's a link there at thecelticcoach.com. All right, my dear listeners, I hope and I trust that you've got something from our chat today. If you'd like to hear more, head over to the website. Otherwise, we will talk to you next week. Yes, indeed. We got another full show for you all next week. So stay tuned for that. The Celtic Coach, we're bringing you the best in Irish music every Friday from 1 to 3. Interviews are from 1:30 to 2:30. And boy, we've got a great lineup for you for December. So stay tuned for that. Lots of great stuff to come. Have fun, stay curious, and think big. I'm the Celtic Coach, everyone. And that's our show. Cheers.